Yeah. Some backpack raps. Turn it up. Hey, yo, life's a bitch and then you die. Yeah, we knew that, but screw that. I'll toast to the future, not where the crew at. It's FTB until I'm 6 feet deep. Yeah, we done started a movement, a leader, never been a sheep. So I don't follow the crowd, I'm trying to make my own lane. Lost a lot in this life, but I still got more to gain. Never take for granted the fans who've been waiting for the day I blow like Nagasaki on everyone, ignoring the name. Verses pour from my mind like that Kentucky bourbon. But I was born in the shy, my mentality's urban. Never was sure about my purpose, but I know one thing's for certain. I came here to fuck up the game till I'm wanted for murder. Gotta be honest though, I know I got talent and I'm driven to make my vision come to fruition. No indecision, achieved a lot in life that some said I wouldn't. So what's the difference when it comes to this rap shit they saying I couldn't? Bound to fail, I ask them why. Cause I'm white in my 30s, I got a family and work a normal fucking job. You must be kidding, man, that fuels the fire. And I'm prepared as I get bigger for haters to put me through the wire. But I won't let it bring me down, I got that tunnel vision. Like a horse in a derby, I'm just focused on winning. Passing up my peers, no wonder why I'm always grinning. But when it comes to my enemies, my trigger finger itching. Don't like the negativity, I'm only moving up. So if you ain't with me on the grind, then how can you say I don't do enough? Soon enough, they all go see I proved enough and rock with it. All from the bottom, there ain't no stopping it. Music's my passion and I made a promise to always crush whatever the fuck was in front of me. So let's be honest, do I? Hell yeah, they know the flow dumb. And one thing's for certain, if you don't chase your dream, it won't come. But you can't ever chase your dream if you don't run. So I'm gunning for the tip top, homie, and then some. Make it a habit of smashing raps in my backpack like snack packs. I got my cat backwards, listening to Mac Miller. Got some Nikes on my feet, running them laps around my peers, but they too proud and cocky to admit defeat. But I ain't taking prisoners, they on my plate. It's time to eat, it's time to show them what I'm about. Cause then they'll want a fucking feature, what a piece. That's cool though, I really can't blame them. They'd rather do a track with your boy, cause they won't be getting nowhere if they hate them. But in the end, I love this hip hop shit. So I'm gone, got a plane to catch. Kick rocks, bitch.
Welcome to HomeFront Sitrep. I hope you're in for a great show today, because I'm just a veteran talking about what's on my mind and maybe yours.
You can find HomeFront Sitrep on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You can also check out HomeFront Sitrep's YouTube channel.
Buckle up, the show is starting.
Mic in hand, ready for deployment. Podcast feels heavy as the ointment. Veteran tales straight from the trenches. Pop culture splices, pulling down the fences. Homefront Sitrep, stories that collide. Veterans speaking truth, no reason to hide. Gritty and raw podcast on replay. Decoding the past, paving the way. War zone whispers, bullets and bombs. Back to civilian ticking like a time bomb. Medals on the mantle, scars on the mind. Every episode another mystery to find. Homefront Sitrep, voices from the fight. Veterans sharing dark, stepping into light. Real life saga, not some fairy tale. Truth and resilience, never gonna fail. Homefront Sitrep, stories that collide. Veterans speaking truth, no reason to hide. Gritty and raw podcast on replay. Decoding the past, paving the way. War zone whispers, bullets and bombs. Back to civilian ticking like a time bomb. Medals on the mantle, scars on the mind. Every episode another mystery to find. Legacy 11X, story of Marines. Army anecdotes, Gulf War scenes. Vietnam echoes, Desert Storm sounds. Podcast chronicles, glory and bounds. Homefront Sitrep, honesty is core. Veterans laying bare what they endure. From the front lines to the homebound grief. Episodes of grit, grind through the grief.
Welcome everybody to a Monday edition of Homefront Sitrep. How is everybody doing? Gunny, how are you, sir?
Good, man. Good. Sick of this rain. Sick and tired of this rain. Had a couple of doctor's appointments this morning. Well, one doctor's appointment at dermatology. They took a couple spots off, so waiting for pathology to come back on that. And then had to go see the vampires over at the VA for my annual blood draw and urinalysis.
Nice.
How about you?
Yeah, man, I had PT this morning, and I'm super swollen, which I was swollen on Monday, and went back in today, and it was still super swollen. So I actually have some new tape on my knee because they're trying to get the swelling to go down, which I think is limiting my movement of my knee. Now we did get it to bend inside at the PT office today to 80, which they want me past 90, but we're getting there slowly but surely, and they think the swelling is what's keeping it from bending all the way. So I mean, like down around my ankles, they were like grabbing it, and it was just like indentions from where I was swollen so much. So they got me taped up like Spider-Man, kind of looks like a spider web going down my leg to help force that swelling up into my upper part of my body to get out of my body. Yeah. So, and then once we get done, doing this recording of this episode, I'm going to go upstairs and prop my leg up above my head, and that'll help as well. So, and then I'll throw some ice on it too as well. So, but no,
you have one of the cubes with the sleeve and all that.
Yeah, so it's the cooler. You put your ice and water in there, and then I do have one of those, and I had it on there last night. I guess I had it from on there from like 10:30 to about 11, and I tell you, when I took it off, my knee looked so weird because like some parts were still swollen, some parts was not swollen. I was like, holy
the parts where the webbing and the mesh don't cover. It looks like you were a little bit of a busted biscuit can.
Yeah. I was like, oh man, this looks really weird. But we definitely gotta get the swelling down and take care of that, and hopefully because on my leg stretch machine that I have upstairs, I got it to 84, which is really good. Well, it's good from where I was. I need to be past 90. And then, I'm working with my short-term disability people because technically I'm supposed to be back to work because when they looked at the paperwork, they're like, oh, he can go back to work on the 17th of December. Well, no. So I'm still working with them, trying to get it approved to the 22nd of January before I go back to work, just so I'm healed and as much as I can be by then. So we'll see. But no, so that song, the second song with our intro, man, I'm starting to fall more in love with that. Even though that's an AI generated song, I'm like, bro, it just hits. I don't know. It just hits, it's just like, holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, some of them you can tell are like they mimic another song, right?
Yeah.
And then others, it's like, oh wow, that's unique, that's different. And then you just plug in your keywords and it generates the song for you.
Yeah.
So I thought about playing around with it and doing something for our anniversary for this year. I mean, it's not going to, top the trip to Hawaii, but a song that's specifically for the wife for our anniversary. So we'll see.
April would love that, bro.
Yeah,
I might do that for Julie. That's a good idea.
Don't be stealing my ideas. Come on, man.
And do a video with it, like some kind of video with it.
Yeah, so I've taken pictures of us from when we started dating to the most recent photo we had, and just made a little like slideshow movie on the iMovie, the app on the iPhone, and then put songs in it, and then talked about some stuff because there was one year went to Japan and then came home, and I arrived stateside on our anniversary, but I didn't come back home until 2 days after.
Oh, dang.
So at the end I'm like, sorry, I'm not there for our anniversary. I love you, blah blah blah, whatever. And then I sent that to her on the anniversary. I mean, when I landed back at LAX. So, I mean, I've done something like that before. We've just taken our photos and stuff, but to have a full, and then I chose, lovey-dovey, songs.
Yeah. But you can go in there and you can create a country love song or country
That's what I'm saying.
There you go. Yeah, I'll have to give you the link that I use because you can create it for free and it don't charge you anything.
Yeah.
Then you can download it, and then if you want, we can work something in Canva and create some cool little video to go with it. So do
a little King of Country, some George Strait theme. Oh man, I'm telling you.
There you go. See, because our wedding song, the wife and I, our wedding song is "I Cross My Heart" by George Strait.
Oh yeah.
So you gotta love it. So Super excited about today's guest, man. He's a former Army soldier. Then he went Marine Corps. Just recently got out of the Marine Corps. His mom is the host of Conversations with a Vet. So Miss Carol Lee is his mom. So we're going to bring up Mr. Shelton here in just a second, and we're going to dive into his story, man. Talking with his mom. She's the mom of two Marines. Her youngest son Grant was in the Marine Corps, and during the whole push with the whole COVID thing, they made him take the shot. Well, he had an adverse reaction to the COVID shot, and got put into med platoon or med battalion, and got medically separated because he's going to be struggling for the rest of his life.
Yeah,
the whole COVID thing.
Yeah, I think Micah developed in IgA deficiency because of the shot, and whether it was the first one or the second one, but he developed some type of deficiency, and he has issues that he'll deal with the rest of his life too. So, I mean,
unfortunately,
it sucks for him, being a young man, and obviously he had a career in front of him, whether he stayed his 4 or 40. And it sucks for Micah because it's limiting him to what he can do, moving forward after college.
Yeah, that's the bad thing about it. Like I got both of the 2 shots, and nothing happened to me, and the wife got 2 shots. And here's the funny thing. So the wife got her 2 shots and wound up getting COVID like 2 weeks later. I'm like, and she's had it 3 times. Like, she's had COVID 3 times since it started, and I've never had it 1 time. And I'm like, bro,
I think I had it like November, December of 19. Because I had like a whooping cough and some irritation and stuff. And then, those were the early symptoms in like March when they announced. And then I did, both shots and a booster. I never got it after that. I've got a teammate who he did the infusion. He's had COVID like 4 or 5 times, maybe 6 times.
It's crazy.
So, I mean, it's just one of those things like with the flu too, right? You get the flu shot, and it's not saying you're not going to get the flu. It's just going to lessen the, symptoms of it.
Yeah. Like I don't go to the doctor very often, like for medical purposes, like being sick. Like I've been at AT&T for 13 plus years, and I've been out of work twice. And that's because I was contagious. Once I had the flu, once I had strep, and I had to go to the doctor to get, medication or whatever for those. But other than that, like I hardly get sick. Now I have these sinuses that are real friggin' bad.
And I'm telling you, that's why you need to do your PACDAC stuff, because they took my sinus stuff and related it back to pick a trip to Haiti, either or. The 99 or the 04 trip. Dealing with the dust, debris, the burning trash, all that stuff, and then of course, whatever we were exposed to in Iraq. Yeah. So that's what got me to, the 100% was just the PACDAC stuff, and having that history of sinusitis is what they called it, and they rated me at 30% only because I've not had any surgeries, and I'm like, I'll deal with a sinus infection every 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. So I get these sinuses every year, and a lot of times it's really bad around like the changing of the seasons, when it goes from cold to hot or hot to cold, and then when it switches back and forth, that really pricks with my whole sinus area. And I told my primary care, and she's like, well, it sounds like you got allergies. I was like, no ma'am, I don't have allergies. So she gave me allergy pills, but she also put it in there that it's sinus related. And I'm like, so, I still got to go back and see my primary care here shortly, and go from there. But what the heck? Yeah, we're going to have to figure out that tattoo, Killian, when we bring you up on the stage. All right, so let's go ahead and bring him up on the stage, because he's sending text messages. Let's bring him on up. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, guys?
Oh, hanging in there.
Please don't tell me that is your tattoo.
It is 100%. That is me in that photo. 100%.
What the?
Yeah, it's because I thought about that when you were kind of giving the intro.
Yeah,
how I went from the Army soldier side and then to the Marine Corps. I was like, I actually have a tattoo about this, and
That's crazy.
So yeah, that was when I was going through my advanced school, and a bunch of the guys in my class, we went to one of their houses to sit around and get drunk, and then some. Because I told one of them, because one of the guys in my class was in my platoon at the time.
Yeah.
And he's like, yo, tell him about your tattoo. I'm like, come on, man. And then everybody's like, what are you talking about? And then they mentioned what's on it. And I was just like, all right, give me a shot and we'll do that. So,
oh, God.
Yeah.
So did you do the tattoo at your buddy's house?
No. I got the tattoo done. Like the first, I had that tattoo for like a couple years at that point. And
okay.
It became a topic of a lot of humorous discussion. Somebody told me they found it on Terminal Lance at one point. And yeah, it was, and some other, because I mean, for over the years, it's been Terminal Lance. I think some other Marine Corps meme site or military meme site, it circulated through there at one point. I never saw it, on the site per se, but like, yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Well, we have to have our viewers see what we're talking about here.
Here, go put it back up there, Sam.
Oh, I gosh,
Let's talk about this tattoo a little bit. So, what's on the top?
So the top, originally, this is when I was in the National Guard, and I was a motard at one point. And so it's kind of blurry of a picture, but it's because everybody was drunk in that picture. But anyway, it says soldier across the top. And so the original plan was it was going to be like, like shipping stencil style font. And then it was going to have like, barbed wire wrapped around it. And I had this idea of putting cami netting over it, and it had bullet holes, and it was an unfinished tattoo. And so I never got it finished, because by the time I was wanting to get more tattoos, I joined the Marine Corps. I was like, well, I can't just finish this tattoo. That's dumb. And so, and I'll come back to the boot camp part of this story, this tattoo later. But then eventually what I did, went home to visit the folks, and it was either, I can't remember, I think it was a birthday present. My dad was like, yeah, so your birthday present is money for a tattoo. We're going to go get tattoos together. I'm like, oh, tight. And he's like, what do you want? I'm like, honestly, I don't know. And then I walked in there. I was like, oh, I know how to correct documents. So what's on the original tattoo there is a straight line through it
with your initials
and and that is my handwriting. So I wrote just on a piece of paper, in big letters, my initials, and the guy's like, oh, this is going to be so funny. And so he did that first. And then underneath, obviously the more obvious part is Marine Forever underneath. So,
oh man.
So yeah, that is a professional documentation correction that is on my back. That's how you professionally correct things.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Holy cow. All right. So
I remember doing that in the logbook as senior watch officer, as duty or whatever. You're like, oh nope, line initial, just to say yes, I'm the one that did it. That is hilarious.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
That photo is going to be shared within my Gunny and above group.
I have at it. One of them probably seen me. It's like, oh, I know that prick. So, yeah.
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna start circulating around some of the groups that I'm in. I'll be like, look at this. This is dedication.
It'll be interesting to see the feedback. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm gonna put it on TikTok too. So
oh god, not TikTok.
It's gonna be circulated.
Yeah, so, Willis is ate up with TikTok here. He's the past few months, he's like, you need to download it. I'm like, I'm not downloading TikTok. He's, man, you need to download it. I'm like, no, it's not happening.
Well, there's a great veteran community on TikTok. When when I first was, telling people I was going to start focusing on TikTok, because I hadn't focused on it just since I started doing the podcast. And what I really want to do is stream from StreamYard into TikTok, so my podcast is live on TikTok as well. But it's a pain in the ass to get that stream key from StreamYard to be able to do that. But I've developed a great veteran community on there that have very like-minded like I am. And just literally, I was on there yesterday, and there's this veteran on there. They call him the Christmas Angel. That's not his screen name, but that's just what they call him. And I jumped into one of the chats with some of my friends, and he goes, "Hey, what's your PayPal?" And so I gave him my PayPal. He said, "Oh, that's not working. You got Cash App or Venmo?" I was like, "Yeah, I got both of them." He goes, "Give me one of them." So I gave him one of them. He sent me $250 yesterday. He said,
Holy cow.
He said, just pay it forward. I was like, all right, we'll do. I wasn't expecting him to give me $250, but he did. And I'm like, all right, let's roll with it. So I'm going to, give it back to other veteran creators on TikTok. That's kind of how you go back and forth and share the wealth. So I'm going to do that, go from there. So, but we kind of jump right into, tattoo and the humor thing with you coming up on the stage. Do me a favor. Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and our audience, if you don't mind?
All righty. So I am Killian Shelton. I am 33. I first joined the National Guard actually while I was still in high school. I did the RSP program at the time. My recruiter was very clever, and I fell right into it because he was just like, "Yeah, do you have a plan for after high school?" And I was going through a lot of personal issues at the time, so at the time I didn't have a plan, and I didn't even know what I wanted to do, and I mean, let alone like the idea of being in any kind of service member position. Like, honestly, what happened is the National Guard recruiter got to me first. I think that's what happened. There wasn't really a whole lot of selling points with the other branches, simply because I didn't seek it out, and they didn't seek me out except for this dude. And so I was like, okay, well, my plans for college have kind of recently gone out the window, and he pitched the 6-2 contract at the time. He was like, "Yeah, so your first 6 years, you can either do them first or last. You can go to college first and go to college last at the end of your contract." And I was like, "Oh wow, that sounds really cool." And then I never went to college. and so just in general, I started out as a 91 Bravo wheeled vehicle mechanic, and so basic training was 9 weeks long. My AIT was 12 or 13 weeks long. I think so. And both of them out of Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And then came back home I was living in Montana at the time. So I came back home to Montana after I graduated both of those. Was chilling in my maintenance company for a couple years, and then had a buddy at the time. Well, I'll come back to that. So at some point during my National Guard time, deployed to Afghanistan, had to reclass to comm engineer for that deployment, because our mission over there was route clearance, and then came back from Afghanistan. Honestly, that deployment was my first deployment, and it was a huge wake up call for me, because as far as like, waking me up to what's actually going on in the world at the time. And just, and the thing is, like, compare, and I don't mean to compare, but like all we did over there was we drove around and tried not to get blown up. Like, we tried to find the IEDs before they blew us up. And one kind of funny thing about that is, like, when we were gearing up for it, when we were doing the mode process, and I was going to all these schools, and obviously something our entire company attended was the counter IED training, and one of the things they said, I don't think anybody told the instructor like what our unit's mission set was actually going to be doing, and it could have been a classification thing or whatever. But he starts the class, he's like, yeah, so one thing to remember with IEDs is like your mission totally changes when you come across an IED, and all of us are just like, bro, do you know what we're going to do right now? Like, right. And so finally our E7, he raises his hand. He's like, sir, what if the mission is IEDs? And he's like, what do you mean? And then of course, a couple other guys piped in and explained what we're actually going over there to do. And he's like, oh, well, so just really like backpedal. And so, but like, I understood what he was talking about. So like any other MOS, right? You have a specific mission that you have to accomplish, but when you encounter an IED, the mission changes, But that's our mission was IEDs. Like we were route clearance. Right. If we found them, cool. If they blew us up, cool. Like, that was the idea. So, but anyway, yeah, we did that for 9 months. And then came home, kind of did like in the National Guard deployments or combat deployments are kind of weird because you do actually come home. Like you don't go to a base, like you go back to where you live, you go back to whatever you're doing. I mean, and then you just go. And then the other thing too is like the post deployment, like transition classes for a deployment are all on your drill schedule week. So then which is once a month. And there's guy, and like luckily like that unit I was in, like we didn't lose anybody over there, but we lost like a good handful of dudes due to suicide afterwards. Yeah. And there's actually that first drill after we came home of that next month, a guy killed himself in the hotel. Or it wasn't in the hotel, but like we had all convened, we were at drill. And then as we were getting ready to start the classes the next day, and I didn't hear about it yet. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, oh, hey, what's up, guys? And everybody around me is all sad. I'm like, what happened? And then somebody finally told me. I was like, oh shit. So like somebody actually like off themselves like that night before we all convened. And it was like, Jesus Christ. And so, but that was the start of it. Yeah. And so kind of just went through that next, like, let's see, I can't do math, but it was like a year and a half later, when I finally joined the Marine, when I actually shipped out for Marine Corps boot camp. Cause that whole year after we got home, it was just like, what am I doing? Yeah. And there's a lot more that goes into it, but I'm trying not to digress. But basically it was just like, what am I doing with my career? Like I know, like now I know for sure I want to be in the military, but where in the US military am I going to be best? And so, it was just this idea of like, I don't want to be in a reactive unit anymore. I don't want to be I don't want to be in a support type unit anymore. Like of just cleaning up messes is essentially what it felt like when I was route clearance. It's just like what difference are we actually making? And going off of the events of 2021, it feels like we didn't do a whole hell of a lot. That year was awful for me. If there is anything as far as like my PTSD journey, I guess I'll call it, is like that year was the worst for me, because when I joined the Marine Corps, I was surrounded by guys that had not experienced what I experienced yet. And so, but what I took from that was like, it was like cumulatively a very humbling experience. And it was an opportunity to kind of be the wise dude of my peer group, if you will. But like, I never like flaunted my deployment to anybody. It's like, oh, I've been to Afghanistan, you haven't. Like, if anything, I actually got in trouble. Because when I joined the Marine Corps, I joined security forces, and one of the cadre from my security force school, he actually got mad at me. He was like, he was like, "You're prior service and you didn't tell us." I was like, "No, I didn't think it was important." And he's like, "Well, like, we'll treat you different." I was like, "No, dude, you don't. I'm here for the same reason as everybody else around me right now. Like, that is not a thing. Just because I have a stack on my alphas right now should not mean a damn thing." And so like I did what I could, and like basic training I couldn't, or excuse me, boot camp I couldn't hide it because of my tattoo. But when I went to SOI, it was a little bit better, like kind of like my close group of friends at the time, like they knew, but like a lot of other dudes didn't until the very end when everybody's like, "Where'd you come from?" And I'm just like, trying to hide my head and shit.
Right.
But then security forces, I was in holding for like 2 months, and it was all good. And I was like able to hide my uniforms and just throw them into my wall locker at the time. And then somebody was walking by and was like, "Oh my God, where'd you get why do you have all those medals?" I'm like, "Oh fuck, Norm." And so then it came out. But that was another thing when I went into the Marine Corps. Like I did not want to have any extra attention. I didn't want to be treated differently. And try not to digress, but I did anyway. But anyway, so
well, you're going to, because I'm going to ask a question real quick. So you go cool. You go through Army boot camp, right? So you're 9 weeks there. You go through your AIT, so you're semi-infantry training into your professional training. You deploy to Afghanistan with the National Guard. You come home, and sometime within a 2-year period, you're like, "Yeah, I'm going to the Marine Corps."
Yes.
How was that transition going and have to go back through recruit training for 13 weeks and then to the School of Infantry for another 9 weeks? So how was that as somebody who's already completed a boot camp, has already deployed, and now you decide, "Hey, let's go see what this Marine Corps thing's all about"? Did you know that you had to go back through recruit training? And how was recruit training for you?
When I started thinking about it, I didn't know, but I learned real quick, in that recruiting office. So the way that went was I was working at FedEx at the time, and I was living in Billings, Montana, and I was just like, "Dude, I've got to go for something," And so the first thing I did, I was still, and by that point I had transitioned back to my maintenance company, and I was just going through the motions. And then one day I was like, I've got to do something. And so then I had a day off, and I went to the Army recruiting office. And because I was like, okay, let me see if I can go active duty. Let me see if I can reclass again, go into infantry. Because like at that point I was like, you know what, I'm gonna shoot for 75th Rangers. I want to join the Ranger Bat. And but I'd been in for a minute at that point, so I knew it was going to be a long process, a lot of paperwork and calls and recommendations, a lot of contract changes. But I was like, I got to at least start. I got to talk to them. So I went in there and told them what I wanted, and they're just like, "No, we're not taking any prior service guys right now." And I found out years later that's never the case. Like it's actually a lot easier of a process if you find the personnel that's willing to do that process for you. So, but just so happens I didn't have, didn't run into a lot of good people, that was immediately available to me at the time. And, but instead of just calling another person, I was the Marine Corps office was right next door. It was the Armed Forces Recruiting Center. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm just going to go next door then. And they're like, what? And so I literally walked out of the office. They followed me because I could hear them behind, because like the door didn't just close behind me. It opened again. So I knew they followed me, and I walked straight into the recruiting office and sat in front of the guy. And he's like, "Hey, what's up, dude?" And I looked outside, and like I could see them poking their head through the door, and I was like, "I want to be infantry." And he's like, "Jesus, okay, so alrighty." So when and I think this was like a backhanded compliment, because he's like, when are you supposed to graduate high school? I'm like, "Oh, dog, nah." I graduated high school in 2009. He's like, wait, how? So hold on, you're 20 something? I'm like, yeah. He's like, why were the Army recruiters poking their heads in? I'm like, well, let me tell you. And so, so I told him I was currently enlisted in the National Guard. I'm an E4. Here's my job, but I want to transfer to the Marine Corps. Let's do this. How do we do it? And he's like, oh my God, I've never had a prior service guy before. So, so anyway, so I started that process in October of 2013. Almost a year later, I finally shipped out to Marine Corps boot camp. September, or I shipped out the 22nd, got there, had my feet on the yellow footprints by the 23rd. And so in that time, he was like, well, so, you're going to have to go through boot camp. I'm like, all right, screw it. And so he's like, are you serious? You've already been through, basic training. You've already been through the training process. I'm like, dude, is that what it takes to be a Marine? And he's like, well, yeah. I'm like, then that's what I want. Like, whatever it takes, I don't care. And so, yeah, I just, I said this on my mom's show. I basically had the fuck me up daddy mentality. So, so yeah, I just went full send. It was what I wanted. I knew that I wanted to be more forward. I wanted to be, in more, in the front there, whatever it took, whatever that meant. I didn't even have like a more precise, direction to go. I just knew that I was going to find that in the Marine Corps. Yeah. So yeah.
So compare the two boot camps, Army boot camp compared to Marine Corps boot camp. Compare the two. Which one was harder?
First of all, there's no comparison. The Marine Corps is holding it down to this day, even with all the political stuff. You guys know what I'm talking about. Like the Marine Corps is still.
Did you go to San Diego?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had this. Willis and I both were Parris Island. Matter of fact, that's where we met, was at boot camp.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So, everybody's like, oh, San Diego, Parris Island, San Diego, Parris Island. I was like, you know what? I'll take Parris Island any day, every day over San Diego.
Oh, yeah.
Only because I don't want to hike those damn hills up at Pendleton.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I got enough of that at Bridgeport. The 2 times we went there and hiking in the winter. I don't want to have to do that at boot camp.
It puts hair on your chest. Yeah.
Yeah, it puts hair somewhere. It's you're when you're back in San Diego, you're under the watchful eye of the San Diego government because they want that property, right? Mm-hmm. So most of the things that are happen indoors, away from the public eye. But at Parris Island, not so much, because you're in the middle of freaking nowhere, and
surrounded by water.
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody. They're like, "Hey, I just went back to Parris Island and we went to every pit that I got smoked at." I'm like, no, I'm not making that tour. Hard pass. I'd be there for a week if I did that.
You and me both, because when you were there, I was there.
I would definitely take Parris Island any day over going out there and hiking those hills, especially you're trying to finish the Crucible, that 15 miles, and here you go up the hill. No. After 54 hours of being awake, the last thing I want to do is hike a hill.
Yeah. I'm right there with you.
Well, so to compare the two, right? The Marine Corps is louder, Marine Corps is harder, Marine Corps is longer. It's faster. It's just everything you can think of. And it's not, and I'm not trying to sound biased. It's just straight fact, because I have experienced the two. Basic training in the Army is easier than the Marine Corps, period. And
do you think that matters? Because the Army's different, right? So the Army has boot camps depending on what your job specialty is. Do you think that changes between each job specialty? I mean, I know you only experienced the one, but I mean,
So maybe I can't confirm that though, because like,
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the time frame. Basic is 9 weeks, boot camp is 13 weeks, right? So
Right.
that's just the time alone, you know, how much are you willing to take, kind of thing. The other thing, because I've been thinking about this for years, it's like, how do we have a branch of service that has literally 1 million soldiers in it at any given time versus a smaller branch that has anywhere between 175,000 Marines to 225,000 Marines, give or take, right?
Yeah.
It depends on the time. It depends on what the branch is doing, you know, and with this, you know, Force Design 2030 thing, like there's a lot of, you know, things getting cut, things getting added, you know, who knows what the Marine Corps is going to be like by that point, right? But just with the two entry level trainings, I think just it's more of a numbers game, but that's like way up high, like looking down at the two branches, like you have to keep the Army filled with 1 million soldiers versus the Marine Corps. Because you're so small, you can kind of get away with having a much harder and more excruciating selection process. Right?
Yeah. Makes
And
sense.
and I honestly think, like, from the top down, I think that is a very basic way of looking at the reason why that is. So yeah, because the other thing too is the Army has a lot more jobs, a lot more MOSs. So if they're trying to indoctrinate them as just as hard as the Marine Corps indoctrinates the Marines, right? They're not going to have an Army as big as it is, you know?
Yeah.
Because like here, and just from my experience, like here's a good example, right? The Army has 3 different types of engineers, whereas the Marine Corps has 1. And so the Army has vertical, horizontal, and combat engineers, where the Marine Corps has just combat engineers, but they're expected to do a lot more things potentially, right? Which also, as you guys know, is what the Marine Corps is known for. It's like, hey, here you go, figure it out, kind of thing. But the thing is we've been doing it for over 200 years, right? Army now has very specialized and specific MOSs to do very specific tasks.
Yeah, right.
So like a vertical engineer builds like buildings in combat, right? In a combat area. Combat engineers on the Army side, they strictly deal with explosives, and they're probably the most specified combat engineers out of any other branch, as far as directly assisting the infantry and getting rid of obstacles and whatnot. And so, whereas the combat engineers on the Marine Corps side, they do that plus any other possible way in combat that they can assist the infantry.
Yeah.
So that's just a perspective just by that MOS field, that difference in MOSs. So yeah, I think that's what it is. But the other thing too is, like, you're seeing the results of it every day. Like if your algorithm is tailored to military as we know it today, you're going to see differences in YouTube shorts or TikToks or Instagram reels, whatever, of what the Army is consistently dealing with as far as standards, as far as whatever social stuff they're trying to add into the branch to make everybody, or the inclusivity stuff, right?
Yeah.
The Marine Corps has like policies in place, right? Because they have to, because that stuff comes from the DoD. But in the infantry community, they're just not having it. They're just not having it. They have the policies there, and it's like, but a lot of battalion commanders, sergeant majors, the good ones, right? They keep it to the standard. They're like, because everywhere else they're like, oh, if you're making fun of a trans person, or if you're doing this, doing that, you're not being inclusive, or you're doing that. No, the loophole is the standard. The standard is there for a reason. If you're not meeting X, Y, Z things to be a basically trained Marine to meet that standard, right? I'm not making fun of you. You literally just suck as a Marine. You're not showing up on time. You suck as a Marine. Your uniform is not, is not up to snuff, is not up to standard. You come up, if you identify as a girl, but you show up with a no shave face, like, that's the standard, right? Everybody has a clean face. whether you're a man or a woman, you have a clean face in the Marine Corps, unless you have a mustache. But, the thing is like, if you identify as a girl, or if you're a girl and you have a mustache, that mustache better be within regs, period. So that's the thing, is like the Marine Corps is holding it down because of the standard that they have in place. And that's how they're able to hold it down.
Yeah. I think that's what sets the Marine Corps apart from all the other branches out there. Is we have a tradition, we have a standard in the Marine Corps, and that standard's been around for 249 years, and we've never wavered from that standard. If you're not a stellar PTer, you're gonna get bad performance reviews. If you're late, you're gonna get everything's adjusted to that standard. And if you don't meet that standard, then your reports are going to reflect that, and you're not going to get promoted. You're not going to do this, and eventually they're going to say, all right, the Marine Corps is not for you, see you later, bye.
But there are some exceptions to that, right? So I got injured as a sergeant, as an E5. Got promoted to staff sergeant, re-enlisted with the lat move option, and got promoted to gunny. My last 5 years in the Marine Corps, I didn't run a PFT. I didn't run a CFT. I didn't go to the rifle range because I medically couldn't. Now, on the back end of that, gunny, you can no longer perform the functions of a basically trained Marine. We're going to medically retire you. Right? So, I mean, the standard's still there, but it's not like if I was fat and out of shape, it's different. It's a different story, right? Because then you get your NJPs, you get your write-ups, you get all this other stuff. But because of Iraq and Afghanistan and the op tempo and things that happen, and wanting people to stay Marine, right? Because that's been the theme forever. The commandant at the time, who was it? Amos is like, hey, we're gonna do a program with. I had to look at my promotion certificate. Sorry, we're gonna do a program where we're gonna let you guys stay in the Marine Corps, and we're gonna lat move you if you can. We'll put you in a non-deployable job if we can, as long as you can still perform the basic functions. Initially, I did. I had to take a PFT to re-enlist, and I passed. I'm not saying it was a first class, but I passed. And then I broke myself again. And then again, 5 years later, here's the door. But I had guys when I moved over to the Osprey that it's all about the Osprey, but you still have to weigh in, you still have to tape, you still have to PFT, you still have to rifle range, you still have to, corporal score, sergeant score, all the things. And if you're not doing it, you're not getting promoted. If you're not doing it, there's the door. Because we want people in the Marine Corps that are going to do all the things.
Yeah. So now you've done your time in the Army. You've done your time in the Marine Corps. You made the decision to get out. You're done. You're like, all right, I'm done with my military service. How was your transition from having a purpose on a day-to-day basis to getting out of the military, and now you don't have that camaraderie, you don't have that sense of purpose? How was your transition out of the military?
Here's one thing where I will give credit to the National Guard is civilian work experience, right? And where a lot of guys that have been strictly active duty their entire careers, like that, typically that transition is a lot harder. So I was fortunate enough during my time in the National Guard where, and I'm not saying I worked anywhere for a long period of time, but the point is I was not afraid of getting a job because I knew how to. I knew how to walk in anywhere or call anybody and be like, hey, are you hiring? And not have that, whatever reason, like some guys have pride issues, some guys are just afraid of getting hired, whatever the case may be. And I'm not a stellar resume writer either. I use the resume generator thing that they offer veterans. It's a free service, and I just typed in my MOS, and I kept it to just the Marine Corps, because last time I worked anywhere during the National Guard was over 10 years ago. So I just kept my last 10 years of work experience. I've only been in the Marine Corps, and I just plugged in my MOS. It generates, the skills that come from being in the infantry or an infantry squad leader. And I actually did like a couple, because because you can put in the 09, I forget what, like, basic instructor.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So granted, when I was an instructor, I didn't quite go through the process of achieving the MOS of instructor, but I was a basic instructor at security forces. That was my last duty station. And so I even plugged in just that MOS to see what other skills compared to just the infantry I have. Right. So I did both. And I've been using that as my resume this whole year, no prior work experience. I just got out of the military this year, just got out of the Marine Corps this year. And so kind of a side note is, like, guys, like, I see a lot of, like, I can't put my finger on it, but, like, just a lot of guys getting out, especially the guys that get out after only 4 years. Right. Like, there's something keeping them from just doing that, like just doing the resume thing. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if they just straight up don't know. But the thing is like, I've been pretty fortunate in my Marine Corps career. And I say that because I know that there's a lot of Marines that have not been, a lot of guys that have not gotten the support that I have. And so my hat's off to all of my leaders since I've been in the Marine Corps. But it's not a consistent experience. Mine is very specific to me. Like, anybody that watches this, do not take this as like, oh, the Marine Corps is great, they're really, really supportive. It's like, no, the Marine Corps has its shortfalls. And sometimes there are leaders that really suck at giving the support necessary to guys that are getting out. And
they know their job, but nothing else.
Right. And so the thing is like, it's not that hard. It's really not that hard. If you want guys to actually have initiative with their transition process, you need to enable them to do so.
Yeah.
So that's the thing but again, my experience is very specific to me. I did my TSP seminar, or not TSP, the transition seminar thing. I did that like 11 months out. Like, I didn't wait till the last minute. But the other thing too is I had a gunny at the time. Like, hey, you're scheduled for your TAPS is what it is now. TAPS is what it's called. And so he's like, hey, you're scheduled for, right. But the thing is I was already thinking about it at that time. I had come, did some soul searching. I was like, is it time to get out of the Marine Corps? And I had a few unanswered questions at the time, but I knew, because of everything that I've been told, all my leaders is like, hey, if you're unsure, you need to at least get your TAPS done. You can do it at least 14 months out from your EAS date. A lot of guys don't know that. And so, but the thing is you can go to your TAPS seminar, say 6 months.
Doesn't mean you're going to get out.
Right. You can still re-enlist in that time.
Yeah.
But it's a check in the box that if you do it early enough, you're at least you're showing initiative to your leaders, right? That what the fuck is going on in your life, and you're doing the proper steps necessary to be prepared for it.
Yeah.
So it is a give and take. I will say that too, because it's on the individual, but it is also on the commands. And I've been fortunate enough with both. So at the time, with Security Force Training Company, like I mean, every unit has their shortfalls, but one thing that they were not shortfalls with is the transition process. Guys that were getting out, they're aware of it, because the unit there, it has like over 50 sergeants in that training company. And so, and a lot of them are either on their second enlistment or they're re-enlisting for a third, or they're getting ready to get out. Right. And so, so that nobody there in that training company is new. You know, it is literally a transition place. And I'm pretty sure it's same for combat instructors too. Like it just on a grander scale, because it's SOI is huge. And
Right.
so, but the thing is like commands have to be aware of that. And so, it's just amazing to me, like the difference in at least company level, you know, staffing, where you have dudes that are at a crossroads in their career, and they're just like, you know, what can I do? Instead of just sitting in your office, be like, figure it out, you know what to do. It's like, what if they don't?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what if they just don't?
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, like, so I was fortunate enough, I did my TAPS 11 months out, and I was making appointments and making phone calls, to do, the necessary follow-ups, like the either the vocational educational seminar or what have you. And I was making phone calls to that, but I was also trying to schedule all of that around still doing my job until my last day, because that was another thing that I really wanted to make clear to everybody, is like, I'm not going to drop pack. I'm not going to drop pack, you know, 3 months out and just say, oh, you can't stop time. It's like, no, I am a Marine until, or at least I'm an enlisted Marine until I receive my DD-214 in hand. And it was funny because that last week, my, one of my staff sergeants, I mean, now we're really good friends, but he even told me, because I was showing up at my normal time, the same time that every other instructor shows up, and he looks at me, he's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm fucking working, man. He's like, you're getting out in a week, go home. I'm like, my home is the barracks, dog. Like, I'm not going anywhere. And so, but it was stuff like that. Like, you know, my experience with the transition, at least before I got my DD-214, super smooth. However, the biggest kryptonite with that entire process was the VA specifically. And the thing is like my TAPS class kept me well informed. They told me mainly about the time frames, because like I knew I wasn't going to be able to do a whole lot with my claim until I actually was out. But what I was told over and over again, not just from a VA rep during my TAPS class, other people during my TAPS seminar, as well as other senior leaders in my unit, all of them said the same thing. You can submit your intent to file while you're still in. Cool. Yeah. How do I do that? And so, my attempts at trying
4 months, 6 months.
So the 90 to 180 day mark is the time that you can actually submit not just your intent to file, but actually start, you know, a lot of meat and potatoes for your claim, and get it essentially all set up so that by the time you get your DD-214 in hand, your claim is almost done, if not done at that point. Nice. And so, right. So that information is available to guys getting out. Whether they get told that information is hit and miss, but also if the VA actually does their part and first of all answers their fucking phones, let's just start there. How about the VA answer their fucking phones, right? So that's what I started running into within that 90 to 180 day mark, because I was running into roadblocks as well as computer issues, va.gov, you know, website issues at the time. It's just log on issues, just other issues with the site. And then finally, when I was able to get on the site, I had entered the BDD timeframe, which was the 0 to 89 day mark, right? As far as when you're getting out. So, but I was still going to work. I was still doing other things. I was meeting with my transition coordinator to come up with plans. I was hitting all the check boxes that the Marine Corps requires you to do before you get out, everything except the VA. And so, but the other thing too is the Marine Corps only requires you to get in contact with somebody with VA, you know, and at some point somebody did answer their phone. So, I mean, yeah, I could basically answer that, you know, check that box, but I didn't get anywhere with it, you know. Anyway, so from the VA side of the transition, I've been running into a lot of roadblocks while I was still enlisted. And then when I got out, I finally got an appointment set up in May this year, and went to the benefits office, had an in-person interview, wrote down all the stuff that I'm trying to claim. He puts it on a list, and it was all printed out, and I signed all these documents. And so then I'm like, okay, cool. And I asked the guy, I was like, and my wife was there too. And so I was like, hey, what else do I need to do? You know, what is the next step from here? What do I need to do to keep this rolling? Right. And he says, oh, nothing. I'm like,
yeah,
you sure? And he's like, no, yeah. I mean, somebody's going to give you a call. I'm like,
Ugh.
okay.
No.
And so, well, then, I mean, at that point, I was kind of just waiting. And the one thing I was trying to avoid immediately when I got out was getting stagnant. And so it ended up happening anyway, regardless of like all this stuff. So one of the things that I learned from my mom's podcast is the, what's it called? The Mind Over Land trips. So I had one of those planned. Then my truck broke down in April, and so ended up going through a lot of repairs with my truck, and I was planning on using my truck for the trip. And so that was a transition, measure that I had in place that fell through. And so just not being able to jump in my truck at the time immediately after I got out was a huge weight that, because not only was I stagnant, but I was now immobile, so I couldn't go anywhere. And so, but the other thing too, and another thing that, while I'm struggling with it, I have to point this out. Yes, it feels like I have no boys right now, but the other thing too is all my boys are still in the Marine Corps right now. We've all been there. We've had friends get out while we're still in, but we have to work, dog. Like we can't, it's hard. And we always tell each other, hey, give me a call if you need anything, but nobody from either end always ever makes those calls unless those boys were inseparable the entire time in their careers. You know what I mean? And so, when I say it feels like I have no boys right now, it's just because I'm physically by myself. I no longer get on base. I don't put the uniform on anymore. I'm not surrounded by last duty station. I wasn't surrounded by instructors, like-minded guys. I'm not in proximity of the boys anymore. And and if I'm being 100% honest, it takes, my mind takes it places that it shouldn't sometimes. But I do not discredit the guys that are in. I'm not mad at them for not texting me, or because we all have lives, dog. We all have lives that we've got to live. And when you're in, you have to be 100% in, And so,
but you don't have a choice but to see them every day either.
Yeah.
Especially if you live in the barracks or on base, and and when you're close, even if a guy that I served with he got married and went and lived out in town, I'd go visit him, just to get off base, or have us out for a cookout or something, or we'd still do a boys trip every now and then, but when you separate yourself from that, it kind of goes away, because like you said, they still have to work. You still have to go on with your life, and it's hard at first.
Well, that's where, when you're out, you start finding the veteran community where you're at. So you're down in Georgia, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes.
So you're down in Georgia. So there's probably a Marine Corps League down there somewhere. There's probably some kind of veteran service organization down there that is going to have like-minded people to you. I would highly recommend getting involved, because I will tell you, for me, being around like-minded people and being able to give back and support the homeless veterans and the other veterans, and just talking with those veterans and hearing their story and telling my story, it helps minimize the demons that we have that would creep in and stuff like that. So I definitely would highly recommend looking for veteran service organizations there with you. And I've told you before, my phone number, you can call me anytime. I'll answer my phone. Gunny, you got Gunny's number now because I connected you guys. Reach out to us. We're here. And you know, I talked with your mom several times, and she was, you know, worried about you during your transition period, because you went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. We're not going to get into that because it's personal. It's not my story to tell.
Well, just so you know, like it's there. I have a way with words and my words get away from me so often. It drives my wife nuts. Like I have a way with words, and I could talk the ear off of an elephant for 3 hours about the same topic. And so it's just, I'm trying to train myself to be more respectful of other people's time. But you know, it's not, I just want to make sure that it's clear. Like I haven't been trying to avoid any topics. With this whole episode, I've skipped over a lot of really, really crazy times in my military career because it'll literally take me 5 hours to go through it all. And so, but you're absolutely right. There was a point this year where I ended up going to the VA hospital, but the reason being is because I got stagnant and I let my brain just go. My brain is what took off, but not me.
The demons.
Exactly. And it was boredom. It was, you know, I mean, I guess they call it anxiety, but just, I mean, in terms of like, oh, what am I going to do now? Or, hey, because I'm bored, I really want to do something, but I can't go up to S3 and be like, yo, can you schedule a range for me? You know, and stuff like that. And again, with my truck breaking down, it's like, oh, now I can't go for a fucking road trip, you know? And I love road trips, ironically enough, because I did route clearance. But anyway, but that was another thing. I mean, not to back up just a little bit. That was one thing that I mentally prepared myself for. Again, I've been super lucky with like immediate and senior leaders my entire career. And that was one thing when I was in Afghanistan, my buddy, my sergeant that I rolled with all the time, he's like, dog, we're coming up. And it was like 6 months in, like we have 3 months left over there. He's like, dog, what are you going to do when we get home? I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm probably going to get drunk. And I'm in my early 20s, right? It's like, I can't wait to have a drink or something. He's like, no, dog, that's not what I'm talking about. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And because he's a straight shooter, man. And like, if he has something, he always gives you the opportunity to be smart. You know, he always gives you the opportunity to say the right thing. And so, and I always fail. But anyway, but he's like, no, like, what are you going to do? Like when we go from combat now to nothing, back to the States, back to regular life, what are you going to do? Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, I never actually thought about it, man. He's like, well, you need to, like, what's stuff that you like to do? And I was like, well, I mean, I like road trips. And he goes, dog, that's awesome. Go for a road trip when you get home. Like, cause I could have told him anything that I wanted to do other than drink alcohol, but like, I could have told him anything that I wanted to do. And he'd been like, cool, go do it. You're going to have to when you get home. And so when we got home, I was like, well, damn, like, I got to do something. And so, but I got all this money saved up, maybe take a trip, maybe, do something cool. And then finally, and it just kind of clicked. I was like, I want to like travel the whole lower 48. I want to drive the whole lower 48. What I actually did though, is I went from Montana over to Seattle, down all the way down I-5 from Seattle, the whole West Coast down to San Diego. And then was parked in San Diego next to the beach and put my feet in the Pacific Ocean for the first time. That I don't know why, but it was so cool because I lived in Montana, born in Mississippi, never seen the Pacific Ocean. I just went and did it, and so that was cool. And then from San Diego, drove all the way across Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and on my way to visit my sisters in Alabama at the time, and then drove up from there, up through Georgia to Virginia, visit my uncle who was working there at the time, and then up to New Jersey to visit my team leader we both had just gotten home. Cause he had transferred to Montana for the deployment, and then he went back home to New Jersey. Went and saw him, partied with him for a night, came back down to Virginia cause it was my uncle's birthday the next day, and then cut across from there, stopped in Kentucky, visited family there, visited my really, really good mentor to this day, over to Oklahoma, went to my cousin's wedding. I stayed there for like a week and a half or something like that. And then up to North Dakota and then back over to Montana. Literally did a huge circle around the whole country. And I was gone for like a month and a half. And all the money. The thing is, I have no regrets about this. Like all the money I had saved up from that deployment all went to gas, food, hotels, as I was traveling. And it was like, yeah. And so that was a really, really key part in helping me transition from when I was in the National Guard from that deployment. And then I was like, I've got to do that again. I've got to do something like that again. And so that's why, my truck breaking down, like hit me like a lot worse than probably just anybody else. And again, not trying to compare it. It's just like I had a plan in place. Yeah. I was like, I know getting stagnant is going to be bad. I don't want to do that. Right. And so had that in place. I was going to go visit people. I was going to get a job. Right. And all this other stuff. Right. I had all these plans in place. A lot of them fell through. And then, the rest of May happens after my May 7th appointment. Nobody calls me. I'm like, okay, VA, like what's going on here? And that whole time from middle of April to beginning of June, me doing nothing, because plans are falling through and nobody's calling me. And right. But in that time, as I'm getting bored, I'm doing less around the house. And like, I came out the gate just fine. Like I was because I wasn't working, right. I'm going to help with the dishes. I'm going to take the trash out. I'm going to help clean the house. Right. Cause I literally have nothing else to do. But in that 2-month time frame, like I started doing less and less and less. And I was not only driving myself nuts, but I was driving my family nuts. Yeah. And, ended up coming to a head at some point. And when my truck finally was fixed, I jumped in the truck and I went to Tennessee to decompress, or something. I don't know what I needed, but I left. And it was a hard point, at least in my marriage. And so, yeah, I went to Tennessee and I went to my parents' house. My mom was like, "You're going to the VA tomorrow." I'm like, fucking why? And she's like,
"Need to."
Do you know why? Like this has nothing. Yeah, she's like, this has nothing to do with you being bored. This has nothing, or just being bored. This has nothing to do with just an argument you had with your wife. Like this, you need to go to the VA. You need to talk to them to get this figured out. I'm just like, but they haven't called me. Yeah. It's so, but she was true to her word, man. I went there and I was like, but of course at the time I was like, I just want to go talk to somebody. That's all I want to do. Right. Yeah. Well, what ended up happening is, 2 months after transition, like I'm not in a good mental state. And it came out in that hospital room when I was just going to get checked out. Right. And try and do like an outpatient thing. Well, the thing is like, once you walk in there and you're not okay, they're not going to let you out.
Yep.
So, and that's exactly what happened. I was like, hey, I'm just trying to talk to somebody, had way too many dark thoughts recently, and it's gotten dangerous towards me specifically. And they're like, oh, and it's good that they take that seriously. But they were like, yeah, so we're going to schedule you for inpatient care. We're going to admit you to the, basically the psych ward. And, and I was like, whoa, no, I'm leaving. They're like, well, the cops are going to stop you. I'm like, what am I going to do? Fight the cop? Like, let me the fuck out of here. And like, I was screaming. And after that, like, definitely not going to let me out after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but then again, like it was like that clicked. I was that first night I was super defeated, but the next day it was just like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
You know, I'm good now. I don't, you know, so
it's a good thing that your mom, like I said, she's a smart lady. She's, she was talking to me during your whole process of your transition. We were talking quite a bit, and even with Grant's situation, your brother's situation, we talked quite a bit, and I tried to get her help where I could get her help, with getting her connected with Dr. Teresa Larson and everybody that I could get her connected with. And she was telling me your story, and I was like, he needs to go to the hospital. And she goes, yeah, I've already told him that. That's where he's at right now. And luckily, you were there. You were very receptive of it, and you came out better on the other end, on the other side. And with the VA, here's the thing: the VA is designed to keep you, Sam, frustrated, and you have to stay on the VA, and you have to have a primary care doctor. They're the ones that's going to set up all your appointments and get everything situated. They're not going to call you; you're going to have to call them.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
I found that out numerous times, and I don't try to call the hospital. Normally, I'll call the Stony Brook Clinic where I go, and I usually get a hold of somebody pretty regularly when I call up there. The hospital, it's so hard to get a hold of somebody at the hospital itself.
The best thing to do, honestly, is get the My Health eVet thing up and just start messaging people on the My Health eVet. That's what I do to my primary care at the VA. And and each VA is hit or miss. The one here in Cincinnati I cannot complain about at all. Maybe I can, but I'm on my 5th doctor at my 5th primary care since 2011, and I can get on there and hit message the OEF, New Dawn, whatever clinic they want to call it now. Hit that, and it's going to go to my doctor, it's going to go to his nurse, and it's going to go to another nurse practitioner. So 3 people are going to see that message. One of them always responds, depending on the day. Like right now at 1:00, I would get a response today before end of business. If I do it after business hours, I may not get a response until tomorrow.
Yeah,
but so the My Healthy Vet, I don't even bother to call anymore. Because it's stupid. Because you call the main line, then you have to know there's 6-digit number, and you might have to leave a message. My Healthy Vet in the message system is the best thing that I've had, since getting involved with the VA.
Yeah, so I use the VA app, which is the one right there that says VA, and then log into that with ID Me. That's what I use, ID Me, and then I can go in there. I can see my rating. I can see all of that. I can see all my appointments. I can see everything, and then I can message. Like the other day, I needed my medical records from the beginning of December to current. So I sent a message to the medical records, and it was later in the day, so I figured I'd get them. So I got them the next day, and then I uploaded those to my short-term disability because of my knee. Right. And they've already received them. So it's usually pretty quick if you message them. And sometimes it's a lot easier to message them because they'll respond a whole lot quicker through that because they're always at their computers and stuff. So,
well, not only that, it's also a tracking system, right? So if you say you sent an email and you sent it today, but they don't respond to you until after the 1st of the year, they're not off that entire time, right? There's always somebody there. So it's a way to hold them accountable too, because if you call, you can show that you called the number, but it doesn't mean that you got a hold of somebody. You got a hold of somebody and talk to somebody, right? Yeah. So the messaging is probably the best thing to do. Honestly.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you 100%.
Well, so I mean, rest assured, I'm doing. I've chosen an avenue to get my intent to file fixed. And so I've gotten a hold of VA Claims Insider to have them essentially fight for because what ended up happening after that, right, haven't done, because I didn't know what to do after May 7th, after that appointment, right? And so, but then, the whole hospital thing, and there's a great guy named David at the Murfreesboro VA hospital. Like, he kind of went through, but then in the process of me driving home, I don't know where the paperwork went that he wrote down a bunch of steps for me. I was just like, oh, damn it. And so, but then in June, I got a job. Like, I went to work, and that helped tremendously, right? Just not being stuck at home. And so then I got, into working a lot, and then left one job for another that paid a little bit better. And then, but in August, I got a call from the Columbia, South Carolina regional VA office, right? And this lady was like, it basically sounded like a VA pitch to me. And I was just like, okay, this is kind of weird, but I didn't want to be rude and like interrupt her. So I just let her talk for a minute, but she basically like listed off all the things that I rate as a veteran. I'm just like, ma'am, thank you so much for all the information. I just have a question. So, do you have anything under my information for May 7th this year? And she's like, and then she asked me for a little bit more information, and I gave it to her. And then there was like an awkward pause, and she's like, I'm sorry, sir. Like, we don't have anything for May 7th. And I was just like, oh, well, let me tell you all about it. And so I did. I told her everything that happened in that interview, told her about the same questions that I asked, this and this and that. And she's like, oh my God, sir, I'm so sorry that, that's what he told you, but he gave you incorrect information. Like, you're supposed to go on va.gov to claims and I was like, well, what about May 7th? Like, that was supposed to be my intent to file date. And she's just like, another thing, I'm really sorry, sir. Like, if we don't have that in the system, that can't be your intent to file date. And she was a really nice lady. She was trying to be helpful. She's like, but what I can do is I can establish this phone call today as your intent to file date. I'm just like, okay, that's almost 4 months of time that is no longer going into my claim. And she's like, I'm sorry, sir, there's just nothing we can do. I'm like, well, what if I get the paperwork? What if you guys just make a phone call? Like, I could tell you what office it is, can you guys do something about it? She's like, no, we don't make those phone calls. I was just like, okay, who do I have to call? Right. And she said something about going through avenues of making a complaint through the state and this and this and that. I'm just like, oh my God. And so anyway, I was just like, well, this is dumb. And so it's just that every conversation, every avenue, it's hard for me to like pick an avenue and go, right?
Yeah.
Because everything that I've been told, including all the time that I was in, the VA has not followed through with any of the.
Did we lose the audio?
Yeah, I've lost audio.
I lost his audio too.
And he's frozen.
Yeah, he'll come back. Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes when you file or you try your letter of intent in one state and you're living in another state, sometimes it gets lost. I don't know, the whole situation here with.
But again, like I said, there's good VAs and there's bad VAs, right? So when I was doing the stuff with the one nonprofit, I would hear the nightmares about some of the VAs. I mean, I thought the Dayton VA here in Ohio, I'll never go there. I've heard so many horror stories just from some of the guys that I know that go there, or even some of the clinics. I won't go to the clinic, or I won't send guys to the clinic. Oh, it looks like Killian's back.
My back.
Yeah, he's
low. Test.
You were froze. You were froze.
Oh man, that was dumb. But but yeah. So that's where I'm at right now. So I'm going through. I've chosen to go through VA Claims Insider and just have an actual assigned guide to me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm dumb. It's just that at this point, like, I've given up. If I'm doing my due diligence, and I've been doing it for over a year now with the VA, and I keep running into the worst roadblocks possible, like, now I have I mean, yeah, I got to pay him a little bit of money, but honestly, if it means that I don't have to deal with this fucking process anymore, with this claims process anymore, I'm going to hire these folks. So that's what I'm doing right now. And I've uploaded my DD-214. I've uploaded the May 7th paperwork to show them that I went to the benefits office with the list of things that I'm trying to claim and whatnot. So hopefully my coordinator, my coach can not only get that too, but obviously also just get the claims process going. And so
there's people that will do that for free, right? That don't charge you.
Hey, I've heard of them, but I've already started this process.
He's already past that point.
I'm past that point. This is what I'm going to do. If it doesn't work out, I'll call somebody else. But if
it don't work out, call me and I'll guide you in the right direction, which is what you should have done in the first place.
Call Willis, who just now started his claim.
Well, no, I did mine last year. I started it actually about a year. So
when did you get out? When did you get out?
Shut up, B.
Oh man,
exactly. Exactly.
But no, look at me, I'm right in the middle.
Right. But no, so when I got out in 2004, I got into a job that had insurance, and I was one of the dumb ones that said, "Oh, there's other veterans out there that need it more than I do."
That was a different time, bro.
Yeah,
way different time.
Yeah. Of course, I still had that mentality. Oh, don't go to BAS. Don't report shit, because that's our generation. We were told, don't do this, don't go. And
have fun proving that shit now.
Yeah, I know, right?
Right.
Trying to find buddy letters. Like literally I think we were in Greece, and I was in the back of a Humvee, and the Lance Corporal that was driving decided to go all willy-nilly in the creek bed, and me and the guy across from me flew over top of the troop strap and fell out into the creek and was knocked out.
That's gnarly.
So I have an undocumented TBI, and here's the problem that I'm having. I can't remember who was in the back of the Humvee with us, like who all the Marines that were in the back. And the guy who was driving the Humvee, well, he's no longer with us. So I can't, call him up and say, hey, can you write me a buddy letter stating that in Greece, we were going through a creek bed and I fell out of the back of the Humvee and landed into a creek. So I can't get that letter, So trying to remember who was all in that Humvee with us has been painstaking, but I'll eventually get that buddy letter and figure out everything. So, but yeah, I do know some of the process. Like I'm getting ready to utilize a DAV, Disabled American Veteran Service Officer, who's going to help me file for increase for my PTS, and then he's going to help me file for everything else that I got going on that has already been denied, because I'm 40% rated right now. They got me 10% for tetanitis, and they got me 30% for PTS. Well, for one, the PTS they underrated, so I need to file for increase for that, and then everything else that's going on with me, my bad knees, my bad back, my bad ankles, all of that needs to be all in, service related. So like, my ankle, I testify my ankles, my knee, and my back to fast roping out of helicopters and hitting that deck, because when you fast rope, you hit really hard. So I need to get all of that service connected. And so I'm still doing my VA journey, and I can help you along the way. And if I can't figure it out, I know people that can help us get you where you need to be. So, so yeah, definitely. But man, it's about that time we got to jump off here, because we got an hour and a half time limit.
My bad.
We've been on here for a minute. But
we spent 10 minutes just on his tattoo.
I know, right? Right. Well, dude, I want to thank you for coming on here and hanging out with us. I'm sure we're going to have you back on. I know we kind of talked about maybe you coming on being a guest co-host from time to time, and maybe a permanent co-host in the future, if everything lines out the way we want it to line out. So thank you for coming on here and hanging out with us, brother.
Yeah, guys, I appreciate you having me on. Hoping to jump on again with some more topics, not just my tattoo, but yeah, like because I mean, just before we get off, like one thing I want to talk about is like hopefully veterans are waking up that we're not just a number anymore. We're just because we take our uniform off. Believe it or not, there's a human underneath that uniform, and so we got to fight for ourselves too. And and there's a lot more things I want to talk about that, but yeah. So thanks for having me on though.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you again for coming on, and just hang out in the green room and we'll talk some more right after we end the show.
All right. Sounds good.
How cool was that, Mr. Sam?
Man, the transition piece, right? And we talk about it all the time, and to hear different perspectives, and from when you got out to when I got out, and now you got Killian here who's recent, and still having some struggles with that transition, and even having great leaders, even sometimes we don't have all the answers, right? Because we haven't gone through the process, and that's the hard part is we can tell these guys and girls, hey, you can start this here and here. But having not gone through that process, we don't know what to expect as leaders, right? And then when you see them struggling on the back end of it, it's like, man, what did I do wrong? And I experienced that, when I was processing people out, whether it was guys that were doing 4 years or guys that got MedSept or guys that, get the big chicken dinner or whatever it was. And, not knowing the full separations process, and then going through the retirement seminar and SEPs and TAPs and everything, I was a little bit more informed. But the VA process, mine was done for me.
Right.
Getting medically retired, my stuff went to the VA and the Navy at the same time and came back at the same time.
Yeah. It it's the transition period from like when I got out in 01, 04, the first 2 times, and then what the transition period for now, even with, like when you got out, it's totally different, and it was supposed to be more streamlined for the veterans or the service members getting out. But according to what Mr. Killian was saying,
It doesn't need to be streamlined though, right? You need to have that VA rep come and talk. You have to have the a vocational rehab, right?
Yeah.
So somebody that's going to help you figure out what your job equates to on the outside. The resume generator, I was aware of it, but they didn't teach it. They're like, hey, there's a resume generator, and that was it. And now they teach it. Yeah, you just plug in your MOS and billets that you held, and it tells you in civilian terms, frontline supervisor, stuff like that, to put into your resume. And it's a great tool.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, there's those things like that. And
hey, you know what? So we're talking about Killian, how he's having trouble with filing his VA disability, right? We know somebody.
We know somebody.
We know somebody. So HomeFront Sitrep is partnered with Monica Sanford with the Monica Sanford Show. She is a nurse practitioner down in Florida. She's been married to a lieutenant colonel, retired USMC for 35 plus years. She helps veterans file their disability. She helps them get their rating. So you can email Monica, askmonica0@gmail.com. Let's play that.
I see you bebopping over there.
I know, man. I love that. I love it. So, like we said, if you want to file your disability, you want a second opinion, or if you have just questions about your disability, email Monica at askmonica0@gmail.com. She's amazing. She'll respond to you really, really quickly. So yeah, reach out to Monica. And then if you're a veteran and you're in crisis, 988*1. If you're a family member of a veteran and you're having issues, 988, just dial 988. They will talk with anybody that's non-veteran or veteran related. So just 988*1 if you're a veteran, 988 if you're just in crisis, if you're just a regular person out there. So you can reach out to them. And then, this one right here is you all, Mr. Sam.
Yeah, you're not alone. You still have worth. You still have value. Don't let your dark days win. There are people out here that love you, that need you around, and maybe they need you to be their ear.
Yeah. For sure. And being somebody's ear right here tags into being someone's stranger, something we started here on HomeFront Sitrep. We as humans, we're more apt to talk to a complete stranger than we are the ones that we love the most. So be someone's ear, be someone's stranger. We're not looking for that fix because sometimes you can't fix us. We're just looking to somebody to vent to. So hashtag be someone's stranger. So let's play that commercial. Yeah, so if you're a veteran and you're in crisis, 988*1. Reach out to somebody, reach out to Sam, reach out to me, reach out to somebody that you trust in your community. Reach out to them. So definitely reach out to them. And then HomeFront Sitrep is a proud partner with Reach Across America Radio. The link for the Listen Live is right here on the bottom, reachacrossamerica.org/radio, or you can download the TuneIn app, Audacity app, or the iHeartRadio app and type in the keyword Reach, and you can find Reach Across America Radio on those apps there as well. But it's that time of night, Sam. Let's take us out of here, brother.
Yeah, looking forward to coming back live on January 5th. Willis and I taking a couple weeks off to spend time with our family and for the holidays. So we will see everybody on January 5th live right here on the HomeFront Sitrep podcast. And like we always say from HomeFront Sitrep, be safe out there. We got your six.
Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Suggestions and comments are always welcome.
Cannot wait to have another great show with y'all.
Don't forget you can find HomeFront Sitrep on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcast.
Stay safe out there. I got your six.